Moving on, but still talking agriculture, my next conversation would address the core operational challenges of knowledge dissemination in agriculture, the tangible impact of failures, and also the practical responsibilities of those managing the communication ecosystem for, especially for smallholder farmers. By the way, my next guest is also a lady. She's Aishat Ayijimoh Onusi, strategic communications specialist and practitioner. She's also the co-founder of Four Icons. Four Icons is a communication strategy firm. It's operating out of, of course, it's operating out of Abuja here, but it has its tentacles spread across the country. Ayi, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on Insight. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. I think it's. I should also say that Ayi is not a stranger to me. We come a very long way. As a matter of fact, Ayi and I have worked together for some time, and I dare say she's been doing great things, especially in knowledge sharing within the agricultural sector in the last 2 decades. Okay, now Ayi, I'm done with the niceties and all of that, and let me just bring you to the core issue. And picking from your experiences in the field. What are some of the core surprises you still get in the field in terms of knowledge gap, especially or particularly amongst smallholder farmers? Can you link, some of these knowledge gaps to direct productivity loss in the farms?
Okay, so thank you. The Nigerian smallholder farmer constitutes a significant portion of the farming population,
True.
estimated at about 70%. That's a lot. And they also contribute a high percentage of agricultural production. So this is a very important set of farmers that we're talking about. One of the greatest challenges that they face is limited access to practical and timely information that they need to be able to make informed decisions.
Yes.
And when I'm talking about practical and timely information, I'm talking about information relating to best agricultural practices, whether it is access to markets, whether it is how to manage pests and diseases. So how timely this information gets to the farmers is very crucial. And you talk about surprises. You see, I think the
For
assumption
you,
that we,
especially, I guess that we
yes,
take a whole lot of things for granted. We just assume that they should know this. A farmer should know this. And then you get there, and then you begin to notice that they don't know this. Do you get such surprises? Well, do you get them in the past? Do you still get them now?
absolutely. One of such assumptions is that we think that these farmers have been in the business of farming for decades, so they know it all. Let me give you an example. Fertilizer. When you hear fertilizer, fertilizer is just like it's over there. We've known it since forever. So the average farmer is expected to know how to apply fertilizer. And the traditional, so the shocking thing is that we still have a lot of these smallholder farmers who are still using the traditional method of applying fertilizer, for instance, which is broadcasting. They just broadcast, just scatter it, on top of the soil surface. But under the APIS project, for instance, while we're trying to promote improved technologies, one of those technologies promoted was the urea deep placement. When we found out that most of the farmers do not know how to apply fertilizer correctly. So this urea deep placement was promoted, which actually requires that the urea fertilizer is placed at a certain depth into the soil, not on the surface, because positioning it inside, at a particular depth inside below the surface of the soil actually help with better utilization of nitrogen for plants. So that was personally, I found that quite, revealing. Like I would expect that farmers that have been, in this business for a very long time would know how to apply their fertilizers correctly. That's just an example. And the direct impact of not applying fertilizers directly is that the plants will not get the nutrient that they need, and it would also result in low yields per hectare.
And
So these are
I
some
mean,
of the some of
yes, I was just going to say, sorry to butt in there, but I need to move you along real quick so we can cover as much as possible. And I guess, like you did say, that was just one of the many surprises that you've gotten or that you did get at the onset of your interventions or trainings or workshops, as you would say, or as it is. But I also get, that, beyond the trainings, beyond the workshops that you facilitate for farmers, across the country, I want to think that your major objective is changing behavior and not just sitting down and talking shops or even sharing just information with them. I assume your expectation for knowledge sharing, of course, is to transition or help these farmers transition to practical applicability of some of what you're teaching them. So what then determines your strategy as a practitioner in determining, which behavioral change communication, perhaps which approach will be best to ensure that, look, these smallholder farmers adopt these changes, whether they are for farming or modern farming practices, and that these trainings are likely to stick if you adopt this method?
Absolutely. So in every, just like you said, the knowledge that these farmers, acquire can only become effective if they apply it.
True.
Same applies to technology. When you demonstrate technology and technology is adopted, if it is not put to use, we will not get the results that we're looking for. First of all, what determines the kind of interventions that we bring when we go to build the capacity of people involved in project implementation or farmers directly is to look at the existing practices. What are these people doing at the moment? Are they still stuck in the old tradition that was passed down from their fathers and forefathers? Or have they adopted the known improved farming practices that are proven to be more productive than those traditional methods? So once we identify these old practices, then we begin the process of changing this behavior by trying to convince them why they need to abandon these old practices that they've known for decades and embrace a more productive approach. Then talking about just adoption, we've actually had practical experiences in the field where adoption has taken place. A technology was
Can you
brought up
perhaps give
and the
us
farmers have
examples?
adopted.
Can you share
So,
some examples with us?
so I want to give the example. Now, we were in the field, at a time in a state, and this was not the first visit. This was like revisiting a place where intervention had taken place and technology had been adopted. And then we found that a mixer that was provided for this group of farmers, they were actually involved in processing. So they were using their hands to mix, and a mixer was provided. But when we got there, we discovered that the mixer was back in the carton, and they were using their hands to mix. So like the saying goes, old habits die hard, right?
True.
So what does this show? What this shows us is that there's need for monitoring. You have to monitor, and then continuous education, continuous communication, because these people will just probably look at, let's just go back to to what we were used to. So there's need for follow-ups, monitoring, and constant education to let these people know that this is the best way to go. Not just that, we've also seen instances where personal protection equipment, that is PPEs, that are provided for these people, they will abandon it and they are wearing slippers and moving up and down in an environment that could potentially, expose them to harm. So these are some of the instances that we've seen in the field that actually buttresses the fact that there is need. It is not enough to say technology has been adopted. They have said yes, they've given you the nod, and you've provided equipment or the intervention, then you walk away. There's need for constant monitoring, there's need for constant evaluation to check, to make sure that they're actually putting it to the use that these interventions are meant for.
And I sense that over time, and this is in agreeing with you, that over time, most of these smallholders, these farmers that you see, especially in rural communities, they haven't become haven't become accustomed to, you know, certain practices or farm practices from way back, like you insinuated from their forebears, maybe their grandfather to their father. It sticks with them. So it makes your work, your job, your training, your workshops and seminars, it makes it even more tedious. And as such, sharing knowledge on better and improved practices might initially seem overwhelming for these farmers. And, you know, again, utterly useless, or they might become useless if these farmers do not even understand what you're teaching them. So how do you, as a knowledge manager, how do you get to break down some of this complex data into simple, actionable, perhaps, you know, insights or method for just to assess or to enable easy comprehension? Again, I'd like to draw, in answering that question, I'd like you to, again, draw from your experience, perhaps with examples, you know, from the field, some of what you've seen, you know, how some of these methods that you've used have worked, and which of them gave you the best results?
Okay, so let me first of all say that in reaching these farmers at the grassroots, I'm making sure that the information gets to them in the format that they understand it the best. Extension uh, services officers are very, very important. The extension agents actually do that job better because in the different localities, they can speak the different languages. Whatever is difficult to communicate in English can be broken down in the indigenous language and the farmers understand them. And then these extension farmers actually form the core of our participants in our capacity buildings on knowledge management. In the past 1 month alone, we've trained over 250 project teams comprising of communication officers, monitoring and evaluation officers, and of course, predominantly extension officers. Now, to give you the example, it is really difficult, like you mentioned, to abandon what you've always known and then take on the new and be consistent. And then sometimes it's also difficult. They go through stages of, adoption. Sometimes they are in doubt, sometimes they say yes, and then later they change their minds. One of the practical ways that we've used in the field is the Farmers Field Day. The Farmers Field Day is a special day that is set aside for harvesting. So if a community has adopted technology, for instance, and they are doing so well, and their per hectare yields have increased significantly, we would like to bring them together and invite the other group that are yet to adopt. Okay. So that when they come and they see that community A that are doing the same value chains as they are doing are seeing higher yields. In some cases, double, triple. We've seen it. So like they say, seeing is believing. So it now provides like a knowledge sharing scenario, like peer-to-peer learning scenario, where these farmers can directly ask these farmers, what are you doing differently? How come? What is the magic? Why are you realizing double or triple of what we are getting? And then these farmers would, of course, emphasize the technology the message that we've been trying to send all along. The farmers will now, it's a kind of a form of testimony to say, this is what we are now doing differently, and this is why we are seeing this result. Sometimes it is easier for farmers to convince farmers, because when they see extension workers, they see agents, they see government, there's this suspicion, oh, they've come again, we don't trust what they are saying. But when they attend these farmers field days and they can see physically, this is beyond words now, they can see the physical manifestation of the increase in yields, the productivity that has improved. There and then we've seen cases where the farmers will say, no, this is the way to go. We believe you. This is what we should do. So I think that comes readily to mind. How we try to use the community themselves to convince themselves that indeed this new practice is the best way to go.
I'm glad you responded this way, because my next question was going to be, the doubting Thomases among some of these farmers, and how you're able to make them, believe the science behind some of what you talk about, or these modern practices. Of course, unfortunately, you were out of time. I'd wanted us to talk a bit more on some issues that are penciled down here, data comprehension by farmers, and some other issue on behavior adoption as well. But just before I let you go, just before you go, I'd like for us to do, some quick and brief introspection on your role as a knowledge, sharing expert, as a strategic communication expert, and how integral that role is, for any agric intervention project. Earlier on, I said you and I have come a long way. I remember you as the special assistant to the then Minister of Agriculture, Chief Audu Ogbe, and again, we did some projects or some work together. You at the time as a national communications specialist for the World Bank assisted appeals project. Of course, that cuts across select states in the 6 geopolitical zones. And, we did this because, monitoring as NTA, we were able to essentially gauge, the progress of these interventions in some of these states. So I know what I say when I say that you have come a long way in this subsector, or rather in this, communication circle. So I'll doff my hat to you. But then, whether for IFAD or whether for appeals or whether for the ministry, in terms of knowledge sharing, in terms of strategic communication, how integral has that become, for the successful or for, in creating successful outcomes for interventions in the agric sector? How germane is your role as a communication analyst, as a communication expert, in ensuring that, certain objectives and key indices are met and achieved?
So under the auspices of the 4 Icons Premium Limited, where I serve as the managing director and lead consultant, we support agricultural development initiatives in the areas of developing communication and knowledge management strategies. Because it is very important, this is one aspect that we ignore. It's very important to integrate communication and knowledge management into agricultural development plans. As it is right now, we are not doing well enough, because the project that I have personally participated in, the allocation to communication and knowledge management seems like an afterthought. We have seen cases where we're getting less than 1% of the total budget allocated to communication and knowledge management. So back to what we do for projects, we help to develop these strategies and also train them on how to apply these strategies. But beyond that, we also help them to set up a robust knowledge sharing ecosystem within the project environment. Because one of the greatest challenges that is actually slowing down our development is that we fail to learn from our experiences. We forget. We do one thing today, we don't document our experiences, we don't document our lessons learned. We just simply move on. And then the next time we encounter this problem, we reinvent the wheel, we start all over again. So knowledge management has offered us the opportunity to curate our experiences, our lessons learned, the mistakes, what worked and what didn't work. When this is documented, it not only does it help to improve implementation efficiency, it also helps upcoming projects that are coming after, that plans to go into the direction the previous project has gone. They could look at the lessons, they could look at the experiences documented, and then learn from it to improve and to avoid whatever mistakes that project made. And at the end of the day, it results in overall efficiency, and then our productivity is improved at the end of the day.
Indeed. Aishat Ayijimoh Onusi, strategic communications specialist and practitioner, a managing partner and co-founder for Icons. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Insight. It's been a pleasure listening to you, listening to your take, on this issue. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.